Yeah, welcome to part B of the Vanderbloemen episode. This is Chad and I just got off so if you're listening to this, this is we are breaking down some of our conversation that we just had with William Vanderbloemen, which was really cool. If you haven't listened to that episode, you need to go check that out. But yeah, Chad, you were sharing? You had a chance to read his book, and you were talking about some of the traits that William was throwing around in there.
Oh yeah. I know I know a lot of people probably listen to a podcast where a book is being promoted and they kind of, you know, talk it up and stuff, the hosts do. And I I read it and Shauna's my witness. She ran she ran block for me while I sat in the bedroom for, 2 or 3 hours this weekend
That's
and was
amazing.
reading through some of those chapters. Um and it really was good. I mean, these are all soft skills, right? So we talked on the episode about, self-awareness, um uh fast,
Mm-hmm.
kind of responsiveness, and in terms of being fast with your responsiveness. And some of the others were great. I did take a bunch of notes. But I was very, very impressed with kind of, what we were just talking about before we hit record, Justin, is that instead of like me thinking, oh, I need to come ready to talk with him on his level, business acumen, whatever.
Yeah.
He really came. I really feel like he was really prepared to be on our podcast, which just shows you how much of a professional he is. And I was very impressed by that.
But we
So
were not prepared for that. We obviously we know our lane is to talk dad stuff, and we usually know how to take somebody's content. See the Wade Joy episode. We
yeah,
knew that Wade Joy was coming on. We knew his background. I'd followed him for years, and so we were able to take his content and his story and then help blend it into the dad world. And so I think we were more prepared for that versus I think in some regards almost felt like William was ready to show. I mean, like with the dad flex piece, like he was ready to go. He was like the instant I said dad flex and mentioned renovation, he was like, oh yeah, come look at this. And grilling inside of his house, which is, I mean, that's really stinking cool. But that's something I think we did not, while y'all are getting a raw after show here, we were ready to help him promote his book and link it to dads as possible or as needed. And yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I thought it was cool that he kind of walked around the house,
with the computer, it was
yeah,
so
with his
neat.
laptop and took us out to his grill and stuff. That was kind of cool. So I know I was, at the risk of, being like self-promotional or whatever. Yeah, go to our YouTube. But it was actually kind of funny.
It was
Um,
cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Watching on YouTube is probably definitely worth it if you're
yeah,
sticking around and listening to this.
yeah.
So, well, Chad, what maybe was a key? So we just chatted with somebody who's entrepreneur. He's way up there in the world, married, family, former pastor. Ironically, knows some people but like maybe what's one takeaway from the conversation we just had that for you, or as you're kind of still parenting, well, I don't know, what was one key takeaway that you're like, man, that I need to, I know you read the books, maybe book stuff aside, but just something that you're like inspired with or encouraged with coming out of that conversation.
Yeah. So towards the end, when we were talking about the the fast slash responsiveness
Mm-hmm.
chapter, um, I really liked some of that conversation, probably just because of where I am in parenting right now, because, you know, kids with different personalities, like he was talking about, one kid is like, hey, just give it to me,
Yeah.
brief, right? And let me get on my way. And the other kid's like, hey, if you don't have 20 minutes for me, then like I'm taking that personally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I can identify with those two extremes with my kids as well. And uh and so so yeah, I really appreciated that part of the conversation. And there's so many of these things and these traits, and hopefully some of that came out in our interview. Um, if not, you just have to get the book and see for yourself. But so
That's
many
right.
of these things are intertwined. So I don't feel like any one of these traits are like man on an island, right? You can't just do this one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so to be fast, you also need to be prepared. You also need to be able to anticipate things, which those are some of the other
Traits
traits
in
have
this
to do with
book,
those
yeah.
things. So yeah, I I really appreciate that part. And again, that might just be because in my parenting journey. What about you? What did you like? So I think I've read a little bit more of the book than you have, so I'd kind of love to get your take just based on that interview.
Yeah, I got to like the introduction, right? Um, no, based on the interview, I think two things that stood out. One was he talked about family of origin, and he said that we'd probably have talked about that a lot on the show. And in some regard we have when we talk about like generational curses, but I don't
Yeah.
think we've actually spent a whole episode dedicated to just, hey, let's study where you come from and how that's impacting. The sum of your experiences
Mm.
is who you are. But I thought that was cool. I mean, and obviously you and I think, are relatively aware of our family origins. Like, I've not been bashful about my dad at all as far as who he is and some things he's done and that impact on me on the show. And then I think, yeah, some of that, just that self-awareness piece too, I think that's really cool. Something it inspired me like to really try and be even more intentional with learning about Amelia, learning about my wife more, right? Be a student. We've heard Pastor Joby and other pastors, be a student of your wife. But I think something that he said, when I asked him, I was like, hey, how did you define self-awareness? Because you're examining all these people on it, but how did you define it? Like, you have to have a benchmark, right? And he said it's what you think about yourself, what other people think about you. And I really wanted to press in that moment. We didn't get a chance to, and I hope we get a chance to have him back because I mean I think some of this, while yes we did talk about his book, some of it's coming out of his brain, it's coming out of his head, and it's how he's viewing and anticipating things and talking through things with people. And that's one of those things where I'd love to be like, so how did you practice learning what other people think about you, then comparing it with yourself? Because I don't know about you, Chad, but I'm not running around with a spreadsheet often and just handing it to people and going, hey, what do you think about me? I do this a little bit in ministry as far as like with my leaders when I ask questions like, hey, how do you think
Sure.
Wednesday nights are going? How's the ministry going? Hey, students, how's Wednesday nights? What do you think? Some of that uh is to give some kind of feedback to what they think of me, but it's not a full picture. It's not as honest. Chad, you have frozen on your end. Are you okay over there?
I'm here. Can you were
I
frozen
could
too? I didn't
I
know if it was me or whose connection it was, but
Well,
I
I
was
don't
just about to
know
send you
how
a
that's gonna
message.
play out in the recording, but it'll be there. So
We will see.
we will see. But yeah, I was basically just saying how I don't run around and ask for a straightforward, hey, what do you think of me? And then nor do I think I take that information back and go, oh yeah, well, I think I'm this way. So the two don't correlate and one of us must be wrong. Like, there was some other questions in there or discussion pieces I think that could have happened, especially if when you put it in the microcosm of the home. Hey,
Yeah.
wife,
Yeah.
I think that I'm doing a good job with blank. What say you? And then before it turns into, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and why don't you love me? And why don't you see? Because that's a tendency, at least for me. How then do you navigate that conversation so it's back to, and I know he's got a faith background, so it's definitely for the edification of the couple and the lifting up of one another, not just of a self. And so I think that's something that I'm just like thinking about a good bit as we come out of that interview.
Yeah, so you kind of made the illustration there is I'm not just running around giving people spreadsheet and saying how am I on this, but like, and we talked about this a little bit there too, but it's like I see something come out in my kid that I'm like, whoa, 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 like either it's really good or it's like, wait a minute, you need to work on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's just with our kids, I think in our family members and even people that are close to us, we see something that that annoys us, and it's like, uh-oh, I do that too, you know? um,
Yeah.
and and I don't know, like that really speaks to the whole self-awareness piece or lack thereof.
Or lack
Um,
thereof.
and uh so yeah, that one, I think I feel like after having that conversation, I'll go back and read that chapter again, because I think that I'm doing really well in that department. And then I wanna, I wanna help one of my kids with something, right? And I'm like, oh, like I do that too. He may
Mm.
have gotten that from me, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of a mind blower right there too.
Well, it starts with small, like to put it into some practical for dads might be like, well, what does that mean? Like for me, so my dad also used to always, whenever you gave him a can, whether it was a soda can, a Red Bull. Red Bull was the memory I have, but I think he did this
mm,
with everything. But before he opened it, he had to have a paper towel and he had to clean or wipe the top of the tab that's about to be pressed in and that little divot. And um
I've seen people do that before. Yeah.
I have this, I still have this, I carry this trait. Now, I won't go to the extreme of having a paper towel or a napkin, but I'll take my shirt and any can, does not matter what I'm doing, doesn't matter where I'm at, if I'm driving. It's very rare that I will open it without first wiping the top. That's just one of those things that like my dad had that because he requested that as we brought it to him that we do this. And so it built this repetition. And, and then I think he even noticed it later on in high school. He picked up on that we were doing that. And he was like, "Oh, I feel so bad. I didn't mean to do that to you guys, whatever." And I was like, "I mean, it's not really hurting me." But that's some of that self-awareness of like you don't realize what things you're passing on because if it's like for in this case, it's that's my dad's preference and the way he wants to open up his soda cans, right? Um, but yeah, that was a neat that piece definitely landed for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, and I mean, this book is something where I feel like it has similarities to like an Andy Stanley book or something like that, where it's like there's a lot of common sense in there, and you're like, I'll read this and be like, yeah, some of it was like, okay, yeah, that was good. And some of it's like, I'm not reading anything new here. However, I see a lot of stuff that I need to work on. And so there is some of that there. But I would say, um, yeah, it's a good read. There's some good data in there. I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
I'll probably go through it again, at least bits and pieces. I feel like once you've gone through it and you see how some of them connect together, you can then treat it like an encyclopedia. Where you go back and you're
Okay.
like, wait a minute, I feel like I've taken a step back and, self-awareness. So maybe I need to go back and refresh myself. Or maybe Mr. Enneagram 5, I think. Or did I?
6.
Okay. Maybe I typed you as a 5.
I think I wing a 5.
Yeah, I pegged you at least having a wing as a 5 just because you're like Mr. History major, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of those traits. So I know you're not supposed to tell somebody what they are, but I
But people do
see,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I see you at least having a wing of a 5. So I oh yeah, I remember where I was going now. Yeah, so you may just be able to memorize this whole thing, much like Pierce. So Pierce is a 5.
I no
Um,
longer have that
but
not that I was ever photographic memory, but the retention for details and information as I've gotten older has gotten significantly less. Now
I've heard that's a use it or lose it thing. I never had the problem
my
myself.
now my theory on this also though is I quit consuming vast amounts of
Mm,
information. I quit consuming it in the same way that I used to. So in high school, I was a heavy, up until high school, I was a heavy reader. I mean, I love
Okay.
paperback books and I read hundreds of them in a year, if not more. I think one summer I read through 100, like from May to August. I mean, we hit the library weekly. I'd walk out there with 4 or 5 books. I could turn them around, knock them out quickly. And I think some of that
Interesting.
is what trained my brain to then it had the active imagination, the muscles being stretched, just being used. I love to share this. I mean, from Star Wars history and lore to regular. So yeah, when I was in high school, that history stuff was really easy. College was a little bit different. But I think when I got into high school, got busy, was not reading as much, then we have the advent of the cell phone, the, information is now consumed differently. I'm only skimming for quick hit answers. I'm not having to read entire books anymore. And it's just to meet this one moment, then I think I've begun to lose that retention unless it's a really big detail. Um, and some of it could just be age as well. But I blame the cell phone. I blame the fact that I don't stretch that muscle as much as I probably used to. Um, even when it comes to, scripture and sermon prep and stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
I don't memorize talks. I bring notes up there.
my older brother um in high school, and I'm assuming you could do this in college as well, but I definitely saw it in high school. And didn't know this at the time, but he then later told me, yeah, he had like some definite like photographic memory stuff going on. Like he'd be the guy that would like, you know, blow off class, cram 2 a.m. the night before, right? And just go in and ace it. And um he was in line to be valedictorian before he went to like private school.
Mm,
Um, because of that.
yeah.
He could go cram all the information and then apply it really well and had amazing amazing grades. And he's bright too, but I remember him telling me at one point that he didn't have it anymore. And uh I assume for somebody that has that skill and loses it, that's got to be difficult because people like me who just have to do it the good old fashioned grind it out way, you kind of develop some of those skills, right? Like you
Well, right.
learn.
You had to actually learn how to study. So I mean, I was never the late night crammer. I always got to that night before and was like, I either know it or I don't. Like this is just how this test is going down.
Oh, gotcha.
But I
Yeah.
was a sponge in class. If you were teaching me in class vocally, so that made online college a little more difficult because nobody's teaching you audibly, and I'm definitely more of an audible. That's probably my biggest thing, and I do still have some of that where like I think that's why I love podcasts and why I love long form teaching and things like that is because it's the audible and so stuff sticks. So like we didn't talk about this
Yeah.
on the interview, but when he mentioned I just got done today listening to Pastor Ed Newton out of CBC in San Antonio teaching a whole talk on artificial intelligence and how some of its design and intention is to attempt it's almost a new Tower of Babel. It's this idea of how can we play God, and yes, there is benefits to it, but it's at which point does it try to supersede? Um, but yeah, I love, so I think that's part of it. So, but yeah, I was never photographic to the extent that I could just roll into I could cram the night before and then roll in because I mean history was the only thing I was really good at. Writing, not so much. Math was definitely a crapshoot. Um, I think I just had some natural test taking abilities, and then yeah,
Okay.
information that I like. But yeah, I never studied though, so that's kind of what I was trying to get. That's what I was getting back to is I never studied. I never truly sat down and like if you were to ask me what does studying look like, and you're not talking about studying scripture, I don't know. To me, it's just memorizing information, and
Hmm.
that's not actually taking information and making it where it's permanent. Memorizing information is usually more for short-term memory. It's, oh, I need to know
Yeah.
this so that way I can pass this test the next day, or know I have a final exam in 3 months, so I just need to hold it in there till then, and then I push it out with new info. Um, So as far as, yeah, if you're asking me to study, and then in college with history, it's all papers. So you're not really studying for the further along you get in a degree like that, the less actual multiple choice exams, which again, I'm a natural test taker, so I don't mind as long as I've heard the information somewhere. I can usually guesstimate and or I'll know it on the top. It got harder as it went on because the details got more and more defined, versus being broad, like who won World War II, stuff like that. But um with that, when it becomes just papers, you're not studying for a paper. You're just doing a lot of research. You're reading a lot of things. You're creating and developing and crafting an argument. You put your argument out there. You put your sources in. You probably do the bare minimum because you're staying up the night. Those I did the night before, and then you know you moved on to the next one, and then you just hope that your writing was persuasive enough and with as few grammatical. Actually, I always got dinged for grammatical errors. I have bad grammar, but anyway, that's where I was at with some of that stuff. But yeah, it can be difficult.
And let me just tell you, with AI, we put, and I'm talking about Chat GPT specifically. That's the one that I've played
Yeah,
around with a
that
little
one.
bit, but we put a lot of trust in that thing. And for example, I was playing around with it in prep for tonight, just kind of
Nice.
seeing what it could do. And there were some things it couldn't tell me. Um, Basically, things I guess it couldn't Google and find out about them. But it also gave me some things that were incorrect, like things that he had done, talks that he had given. And so I
Mm-hmm.
Googled, I was like, I wonder if he did that. I Googled and couldn't find it. And so,
Ed
but
actually,
that's
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was to say Ed Newton actually talked about that. He said that when it comes to Chat GPT, because he was challenging the students that were in his church as well. He said, guys, don't write your papers like this because Chat GPT isn't based on verifiable fact. It is the culmination of data put out by people's searches and thoughts and posts. That's the culmination. And so it's what it's doing is it's taking that past data to then try and create a predictable future or create these narratives. And so that's part of why that is, because it's not working off of like a Google search engine. It's working more off of, I mean, it could be, but from what Ed was saying, it's more based on people's experiences slash opinions and thoughts than it is on this is a citable, verified second, so
Yeah. Yeah.
primary source.
Yep. And I've played around with the Google. Google has one too. I don't know if you can do this in the like on a PC or Mac, but on my iPhone, on like the Google search app, I was able to turn on this like AI
Mm.
chat, whatever thing, experimental kind of thing that Google has, where it will recommend like AI finger quotes search results. And the good thing is it shows you the link where it comes from. Just like anything, right? You click the link and you can see it. The thing that I'm curious, I'm like, why did you recommend that? And all these results I have, why that one?
Yeah.
So even there, it's kind of verify. I wasn't say trust, but verify. But no, don't even trust. Like if this is something that, you know, you're looking for a recipe, okay, no problem. But if it's something you really need to be able to trust, I would say maybe don't do AI. I'm also biased against AI for other reasons.
Like it'll take your job.
Yeah, like somebody kind of showed or oh hey, we can do part of Chad's job right here, right now. Like for real.
They did that recently.
Now not
Oh
not to
shoot.
not to um not to say I'm like worried about losing my job tomorrow, but it is a little bit demoralizing to see where technology is kind of catching up. Now it can't again, it can when people use it's like, hey, give me your first draft of this thing. Um, I think that's okay, but it's when we start to trust kind of that black box Um, it's just not like that's never really worked out well.
Yeah.
Not in sci-fi, not in history.
Yeah, no.
No, just trust that this is okay.
I not.
So, I know I probably sound like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat right now, but
Yeah.
I don't know. My experience with this thing has been, hey, it's a cool thing to play around with, but it's not quite to the point where you can really trust what you're looking at. So,
Yeah. It definitely takes away from originality.
and
But
we went from
yep.
soft skills to
AI.
parenting to AI.
Which he did talk about briefly. So I mean it's in there.
It's true.
But
It's true.
well,
He did bring it up. Yeah.
is there anything else for this after show before we wrap it up and shut it down that you would like to throw in here after our conversation with Mr. Vanderbloemen?
I don't think so. Just that I want to go now. I want to go tell Joey that I talked with him. I
Especially
really
now that
do.
he's got well we won't share that because he didn't share that on the podcast, but he got some stuff. That makes it sound really bad.
So yeah, yeah. I wanted to press in more
None
there, but
of
I'm
it
like, that's not why
immoral.
we're here, you
No,
know. So
no.
I'll
They're probably golf buddies. We don't even realize it.
yeah, it's just that he said he went way back, and I know um yeah, I know going way back. We had people that visited, you know, other
Mm-hmm.
churches trying to see like how do you do this thing, right? Um, on like a scale and whatnot. At least that's what I heard. I could be wrong. I don't know. But who knows? So maybe they talked to the Vanderbloemen people about getting people. Maybe they've hired people from them. I have no idea. I don't have any
Yeah.
insider info there, but um, yeah. Who knows? I may approach him after service and
Yeah.
see what he has to say.
You never know. You never know. Well, all right. I think this was a good time. Thanks for chatting all the crazy things with me.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of like the idea of breaking this thing down, um, you know, afterwards. So if this makes it off the cutting room floor, um,
For real.
I
Yeah, if you're still listening to us, let us know what your thoughts were on this after show format. Um, I think what we can do, and now you're listening, welcome behind the scenes. But I think we'll try and air after shows on the Tuesday following, so that way it's not like it's a brand new episode that you're getting, but it's still you're not just bumping like episodes back to back. There's at least some time for you to sit and process what you just heard for yourself, and then you kind of get our takes on it. But yeah, no, I think this was good. And send in your dad flexes, and then if you leave us a review, give us 5 stars, send emails. You can send all hate mail to Joby at 1120. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. No, we'll
so
we'll take your
if I
critiques
could
though.
put a pattern behind the dad flexes so far, it's either you can remodel a bathroom or you have a big green egg. There you go.
Basically,
That's what it
but
is.
we would love to read your dad flexes off on the show if
Yes.
you've got them. So be sending them. Follow us over on Instagram at the Dad Report Pod. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on socials. That's really where we're at. Share this podcast with your friends. Hope you guys have felt encouraged. Hope you've enjoyed our ramblings on AI and memory retention. And be intentionally responsive.
Yeah. Nothing but love for y'all.
All right. And with that, this Dad Report is closed.